Hello everyone. Today I thought I'll just do an unedited video where I don't talk about myself, but rather about the occasion and how I'm feeling and how today has made me feel. And I'm sure this feeling is something that's shared by a lot of people right now. Today is 19th of September 2022, and it marks the funeral of Her Majesty the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. And I just felt like sharing just how I've been feeling about this whole thing. Of course, when anybody dies, it's a sad occasion. Of course, it is. I've always found it quite difficult to feel one way or another about death in general, perhaps because of the line of work I'm in. I'm a realist, I'm a doctor. I see people dying all the time. And in a way, you become numb to it. You don't really associate feeling so much with it. And I realized this was the case when my own grandmother passed away. She was also in her 90s. I didn't even cry, and I didn't cry for like a whole month. I cried much later and for a very different reason. Um, I think that's kind of how I felt about the Queen passing. Just just numb. And I wonder if this is an effect of everything that's been going on in the last couple of years with COVID and encountering so many deaths of so many people and just it becoming just another thing, another number. Um, but I want to share how I felt watching the parade that happened this morning when the Queen's coffin was being carried to Westminster Abbey. Um, it's been a bizarre few days, actually. Um, I'm not someone that follows the news very closely, so I wasn't really keeping up with any news of the Queen's ill health or even the fact that we had a new Prime Minister. I've just switched off mentally from, well, engaging with whatever's going on in the world. I feel like there's just been so much of bad news recently. I just couldn't help but just switch off from it all. Every time you switch the news on, every time you look at social media, there's always something that is just going to bring you down and make you sad. And when I still remember exactly where I was, where I heard about the Queen's passing. Um, I was on an on-call shift actually in a psychiatric hospital in London, and it's funny because I actually found out 2 hours, 3 hours before, around 2:30, 2 o'clock actually, that the Queen just died, and I'm pretty sure that at that time it hadn't been released in the news, but someone had messaged somebody else that I knew, and I'm not sure if that was the exact time she passed, but there was something down the vines, and I just remember thinking, no, she can't die, and I just remember thinking the Queen is going to live forever, and that's how I felt about my grandmother passing away. That sometimes you feel like certain people, they're always going to be there. They're never going to change. They're never going to go away. And you think, especially after people get to a certain age, they sort of age to us, slowly. I mean, they're just permanently old or elderly in our eyes, and we don't really see time move for them as such. So for me, she was just another immortal person that I never thought would pass away. Like I didn't think Lata Mangeshkar was going to ever go, or even my grandmother, or when it would happen, you don't really perceive that it might ever happen. Um, and I think watching watching the news or the newspapers and all the social media posts about this event in the last couple of days has really opened my eyes about something that we often ignore about the passage of time. um, I saw all these preceding prime ministers today at Westminster Abbey on on BBC, and it was remarkable how old they looked. Um, David Cameron, uh, Tony Blair, they'd aged so much, and I wasn't really conscious of that. I had never thought that that was happening in the background. They looked so much frailer, and it made me really think about how we just take people for granted in our lives, that, and we think they're always going to be here. But time is passing and people are getting older. And I think um, it is such a strange feeling. I think to think that actually everybody is getting closer and closer and closer to their end in a way, which is a really morbid, bizarre thought. But I think one of the times I realized this was when I was leaving school. I remember on our leavers event, sort of greeting and saying goodbye to my teachers and realizing how much older, how much smaller, how much less powerful in a way they looked when you saw them up close compared to when you sat down on a chair and looked up at them at the front of the classroom. They always looked more powerful and more, you know, um, stronger, I suppose. And you never saw them as humans that are also aging, getting older, having their own struggles. And it really set the tone for me because I just remember thinking, you know, oh my days. I think I shared this before as well about the Queen, that she's really come to represent something that, well, more than anything, has brought everyone together. And I actually got quite emotional. I'm not a royalist, but I got emotional watching the parade this morning. Thousands and thousands of people, unbelievable numbers. And I'm not even talking about the crowds that went to pay their respects. I live in London, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to go in person. But I know people from far and wide have come to pay their respects. And what really struck a chord to me was seeing so many people from the army, from the navy, from, various other, whoever was part of the parade essentially. And they all worked together in unison, not missing a beat, perfect harmony. Everybody in their beautiful outfits, their uniforms looked so smart and um, so regal. And then they showed the inside of the abbey and all the people in the church basically dressed up, the choir, and it was really giving me goosebumps looking at it. Because all these uniforms, all these outfits, all these elements of this funeral, they sort of almost represent something that, in a way, yes, it's part of British culture. Yes, it is part of our history, but it is part of our history. We think of things like this being something you read about in history books and not something that would happen in your own lifetime and in this way. And it just gave me goosebumps just seeing how, as a country, we've all come together and how many world leaders from across the world have come to pay their respects. The Queen wasn't just a leader, she was here for 70 years, being that constant factor for so many world leaders, including leaders of our own country here. And she was a woman. I mean, what better example can be set for women empowerment than the Queen herself? She worked up until 2 days before her death. She did her last duty of appointing the last prime minister. And we know the last few years have been really difficult for Britain, whether it was the pandemic, whether it was, just changeover of so many prime ministers in such a short time, or even, Brexit and the aftermath of it. There's been so much going on. And now the economic impact of the pandemic, of the Russian war, and how it's impacted the people in this country in terms of the cost of living. And despite all of that happening, you know it's just it's really something, seeing everybody come together, putting all of those worries, struggles, sadness, everything behind us and coming together. um I got emotional seeing the parade, seeing the unison of the people that were in the Navy and all these young people who were so proudly doing their duties. Um, I felt proud and patriotic, even though I suppose for me, as a person of colour, person of South Asian heritage, I've always found it difficult to know what is home, where is home, um, given that, yes, home is the UK for me. Equally, I'm of Indian heritage. Um, and I just think that just a couple of months ago, I was on my night shifts and we were celebrating the Jubilee of the Queen, and how that brought everybody together as well. Um, a lot of people might have their own opinions about the royal family, about their feuds, about their, the politics and whatever else. But at the end of the day, what we can't forget is that they're humans and they're a human family just like anybody else. And can you realistically say that your own family and people in your own family don't have flaws or haven't done something that's, you know, questionable? At the end of the day, they are celebrities, and for celebrities, sometimes their lives are not private and their flaws are flaunted to the world. And, sometimes without their consent, sometimes without their, approval or their control, even things that they probably don't want to be out there, known by everybody, dark secrets or otherwise, they make their way into the news and media, and they end up being judged by millions of people. The truth is that none of us can speak, given the fact that we don't face that same scrutiny. And it's an incredibly difficult feat to live in constant scrutiny. I mean, in this last 10 days, the royal family, they've not been even allowed to grieve properly. They've had to essentially do their duties and just be present for all these public events, speeches. The king, his mother died, and no matter what he is like as a person, end of the day, he's had to jump straight into the role of the king. And you can see that he's an elderly man himself. I sometimes wonder he actually looks a lot older than he probably is. I've seen so many people in their 70s in my short time as a doctor, and he looks a lot more older. So I don't know what kind of health problems he's got in the background, but I can't say that, you know, um, the pressure of the grief of losing his father a year ago and then his mother, and then the responsibility of taking on this role. I can't say that's possibly have been easy. I think even when parents are really elderly and you've had them your whole life, I think the loss of a parent or parents is hard. It's difficult. Um, I think the Queen stuck through in this last year, and I think, what a brave woman to have gone through the funeral of her husband of so many years in the middle of the pandemic, essentially, not being able to celebrate it, give him the goodbye that he deserved, possibly, or she wanted for him, and continue with the rules that she stuck to, no matter whether our politicians did or not. She stuck to the rules, essentially. So, my heartfelt condolences go to the royal family. At the end of the day, they are humans and they are going through grief, and no matter how close or not close they were, it's commendable that they're able to be there for all of us, do all these processions and all these public events and public appearances and everything amidst going through grief. I've not gone through personal loss of the same scale myself. I've lost my grandmother, but as I said, I wasn't affected in the same way because I've lived quite far away, the last many years. And actually, for me, the memory of her lives in the fact that the last time I called her, she sounded so excited and so happy to hear my voice, and how she always sounded, sorry, there's a magpie outside, always sounded so happy to hear from me. So for me, I can't even speak for what grief feels like truly, but I have seen other members of my family experience grief, and I know that it takes a long time for people to come out of it. So the fact that they're just doing all this, I don't know how they're doing it, but it's remarkable and it's commendable. Um, and I want to end this by saying that, this marks a moment in history for all of us. She was, however limited her role was, however grand her role was, I want to say that as a woman, having had a family life, being a leader of a country in that way for 70 years, I don't know how she did it. And I know some people will say she had a lot of money, she had a lot of support. Of course, none of us can do anything by ourselves. We're all a product of all the support that we get from all the people around us, absolutely. But even then, she was always so graceful, always so poised, and she handled all of everything that went on in her life with so much dignity. And that's something we can all learn from. I just found out today that the first ever prime minister that she sort of encountered was Winston Churchill. I can't imagine that for so many years she's just been there, just the backbone. And you know, for so many years she's been the thing that attracts so much of tourism to this country, whether you're a royalist or not. At the end of the day, that is part of British heritage and history. And and for the last time, I don't know if any other monarch is going to have the same effect anymore, but for the last time, she's marked her presence, today with so many people giving up their sleep, giving up food, giving up everything. They've gone to pay their respects, and that goes to show the legacy that she has left. And whilst she was there, we probably didn't feel the effect that she was probably having in our lives, but now that she's gone, you can really see that she really touched people's lives. And I mean, it marks the passage of time. So if there's one message I want to say to all of you, it's a time to recognize the passage of time and thus appreciate the passage of time, appreciate the people around us in our present who are slowly aging, getting older, especially our parents, especially our loved ones. And death can happen to any of us at any time. It can take away those key people from our lives at any time. And it doesn't have to be age related, it can be anything. Anything can happen at any time. And just, so it's so important to appreciate the people, tell them that you love them, spend that time with them. Like, don't wait for tomorrow, just do it today. My mom's coming down to London and we're going to spend some time together this week. We're going to spend this bank holiday together. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I don't know, I've got nothing else to say really, but I'm truly forever inspired by the Queen in terms of how she's been a constant in our lives, and she no longer will be, and we'll miss her. Definitely miss her. It'll be very strange seeing someone else's face on the banknotes. I really hope they don't change all the banknotes too quickly. I hope that doesn't happen. It'll be strange feeling like we have a king, but of course change is healthy and good and positive, and change must happen. In medicine, whenever we're testing someone's memory, concentration, and basically if they're confused or not, we have the acute mental test, AMT, essentially, which one of the questions is, who is the current monarch? And that answer is going to be different now. And I find that so strange. I wonder what the right answer would be, because for many people, if they've sort of not really kept up with the news, maybe some people might not know the answer to that yet. But anyway, so yes, that was my 2 cents towards the royal mourning. My thoughts and prayers are with everybody in the royal family and everybody else who's feeling it today. I definitely did. I got tearful watching the parade. I'm so proud to be a British citizen today and seeing the effect of our Queen on so many millions of people. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Bye-bye.